Maybe one day I'll be as cool as Russell Crowe.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Today we are checking out this bad boy right here, the new video assist from Blackmagic Design. It is 2,500 nits of brightness, can send out a 12G signal via SDI. If you have the right sort of camera, you can record Blackmagic RAW to SSD, and it is fully, truly HDR. I bought this with my own money, so Blackmagic Design did not send this to me. I just had my eyes on it for a bit. I think I'm primarily more pumped to use it on the GH5 for obvious reasons. It is a monitor recorder, and I'll finally be able to record ProRes. I am super pumped about that because I hate the codecs that are inside of this GH5. H.265, H.264, all-I. When editing that Pocket 6K versus Pocket 4K video, when editing and working with the 6K files, even when color grading them, it was like butter compared to anything I've ever had to work with out of this GH5. So I am highly ecstatic to start be using ProRes again. We are going to be answering a lot of questions. You guys filled me in with some questions that you had over in the community tab. I think the biggest concern of everyone's across the board was the color accuracy of this monitor. You can't really go in here and make any huge adjustments. You can't change the white balance, for instance, but there are some little tweaks that you actually can make that I found. But I will say this, it is fully, truly HDR. It is 100% on the wide DCI P3 color gamut spectrum, right? And I know a lot of you may not know what DCI P3 is, so I did a little research on it. Now, forgive me if you are way more informed on this than I am. I'm just going to convey this in the best layman's dog times way I know how. From my research and understanding of it, DCI P3 is kind of the new kings of the hill when it comes to color rendering and the way things are being displayed on monitors, computers, phones, laptops, tablets, things of that nature. For the longest time, since the 90s, about the mid-90s, it has been sRGB, and it's just ways that colors are being presented to the human eye. It's just all part of the color spectrum. Now there's this committee called DCI, and it stands for the Digital Cinema Initiative Committee, and it's a committee comprised of all the biggest production company houses. I'm talking about Warner Brothers, Sony Entertainment, Universal Studios, MGM, 20th Century Fox. All of those bigwigs there, they combined to make the DCI, the Digital Cinema Initiative. And they came together to kind of get some scientists on board, or whoever, or whatever you want to call them, and they formulated this new color gamut rendering called DCI P3. And it claims to have up to 45.5% more colors available on the color spectrum than the old standard of sRGB that's been around since the 90s. So they are slowly becoming the new king of the hills. I'm pretty sure all of the new Google and Apple phones all have DCI P3 technology inside of them. So it's pretty cool that this monitor has that. I think a lot of it too is that committee, all of those big production companies, I think their thinking behind it was they know that everyone is watching their movies on smart devices, iPads, phones, computers, different styles of television, especially now with OLED television screens. So I think the DCI P3 initiative kind of thing is their way of making sure that the audience can still experience those movies in the way that the original cinematographers and directors had envisioned them to be captured, color-wise, right? So I'm pretty stoked to have a device that has that DCI P3 in it. And I'll tell you one thing, it's actually one of the first things that I noticed when I first turned it on out of the box, how crystal clear it was. The coloring, I was pretty impressed, but here's a thing I found out too, and we're actually able to adjust the contrast. So we can go in here and adjust the contrast. So I was just kind of leaving that on 50. And here you can adjust the saturation. So you are able to adjust the saturation as well. So if you did still want to try to fine tune this bad boy, you do have full capabilities of fully adjusting saturation and contrast. And sometimes that's all you need for color bars, contrast, saturation, and brightness. Really, that is primarily what you use the most when calibrating with color bars, in my experience. And what else is cool is in here, you can control the brightness of the nits. So right here, you'll notice I have it on 560 nits. You can literally dial it in to the exact nits that you want. So it goes all the way down to 100 nits, all the way up to 2500 nits. And it was kind of funny because I was kind of going down memory lane and being like, oh, remember when I had the 702 OLED? That was like, what, only like 400 nits? Let's see. So yeah, that was the max brightness of the 702 OLED. And then when I had the Small HD 502, it was, I think the max on that is 800 nits. And then when I had the Shinobi, its max was 1000. So I was going up and, oh, that would be the max brightness of the Shinobi. And then when we looked at the Portkeys BM5, that was 2200 nits, or something like the Small HD 503 Ultra Bright. That right there is the max brightness of the Portkeys BM5. Okay, so let's get out of that. And here you'll see I was out in the bright daylight. You know, it's not super hot in LA right now. I think the max it got up to like 72 degrees today. But just to give you an idea of the brightness, I had about 6 stops of ND on the lens and still had to drop it down to like a 5.6. And just to give you an idea of how bright it was out there. So this is how the monitor was holding up out there. It's really hard for me to capture truly with using the crappy cameras that I have like on my cell phone or with the GoPro. So it doesn't do it justice, the brightness of the monitor. So I hope I'll be able to do it here in a more controlled setting. This thing has a built-in thermometer, so to speak. So it'll give you a little warning light. And this did happen when I was testing it. So I was out there for about 2 hours straight today in the direct sunlight. I was recording anytime I was recording. I was recording 4K 60 frames per second in 422 ProRes, right? And I did keep my monitor on 2500 nits, totally maxed out. Now, I wasn't recording the whole 2 hours. I was recording intermittently, but the monitor was on for 2 hours. I did notice the little signal came on, as it'll have a little exclamation mark that pops up in the left-hand corner here. After the exclamation mark disappeared, the little warning signal, the fans kind of weren't so loud, and the unit did feel more cooler to the touch. But it is designed to save your monitor in a sense, because it also has an auto dim feature. So when that little exclamation mark, that flash warning comes on, it also dims your monitor. So if you are maxed out at 2500 nits, it'll bring it down to a safer level of nits and let this thing get back to a safe temperature. So that is cool. It is like a safe way of saving your monitor. So here we can look at the waveform, and then you can go here and look at the brightness of it. You can look at the background opacity of it. We can throw her over in the corner, and that's pretty cool. We can look at the parade. We can pop her in there, X that out. There she is. Take her in, take her out. This is all really cool. See, we can pull it out, go back and look. Oh, let's look at her, bring that back. We can do the vector scope. Now we're in 2 times, right? There's 2 times, right? And we could even make that more opaque. Okay, this is vector scope in 2 times, and then we'll punch in 2 more times. And there it is, 2 times now that we are punched into this, and now we can see, we can get a pretty good idea of where all this stuff is. And actually, I'm gonna turn off the guides to this. I'm gonna turn this off. So then we can really get an idea of what is going on with our vector scope, okay? Oh, I'm recording that too. Let me stop that. Let me go into here, let me turn on the histogram, and here is the histogram right there. X out of that, put that in there, make this like this, yeah. So, and then back to video. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I like the scopes. I actually do really trust the scopes in a Blackmagic monitor more than any other monitor, and primarily that's because we have to remember Blackmagic Design, you know, when they bought out DaVinci, they were the only ones, you know, pioneering the color grading service. You know, they are the industry standard for color grading as far as, you know, Blackmagic Design and DaVinci goes. You know, the cameras and all this stuff just started to be an afterthought. So that is the main reason why I trust the scopes in a Blackmagic monitor more than any other monitor. Now we have more cool options down here, which is our zebras. This is my focus assist here. And then of course you have all your aspect ratios, and that is nice to set your lines however you want. Then we have our thirds, crosshairs, the center dot. We have our false color. I love Blackmagic Design false color. Again, I mean, it's just, I think their false color is so good because they are a color grading company originally, right? And then I've already shown you guys the contrast, the nits, and the saturation. It's exactly like the menu settings in any of the Blackmagic current cameras, right? So the LUTs are the same way. It's very simple to install them. As you'll see here, you just put your SD card into the video assist, you load it in, and then you pick which one you want. And then you go over here to monitor and you tap display 3D LUT and you're in. Now the LUT is on there. With the SDI and HDMI, it's all interlooping, you know, and we have both HDMI in and out, and we have a mini SDI in and out. I'm really kind of disappointed that Blackmagic just doesn't include a little mini to full SDI connector cable, just a little miniature adapter cable. I mean, I don't understand why they can't just throw that in, but I get it. They want you to buy the 7-inch version, but I honestly don't want that big of a monitor on my rig, not even on my Pocket 4K rig, right? So it is a bit of a bummer that they don't include the adapter, so you do have to buy that if you're gonna want it, you know, because anytime, most people aren't going to have a mini BNC to full-size BNC, so you're going to have to get the adapter cable, so that's a bit of a bummer. But you do have that option there for the SDI in and out, and it does send a 12G signal, so you can send the 4K 60 frames per second signal out to Video Village. And these are all intercrossing, so you know you can interchange those with HDMI and SDI. So over here on this side, you have a headphone jack. You have your little power port. You know, this is the jack for your power plug. And it is cool. It is a screw kind. So, you know, you won't have to worry about someone tripping over that and ripping it out because it actually screws in. And there you have your SD card slot and your headphone jack. Now, if you buy the 7-inch version, it also has, two SD card slots, but it also has 2 mini XLR ports. It provides phantom power and really delves deeper into the audio side of things. So there is that for anyone that wants that 7-inch HDR version. You do have vents all along the side here. So you have little vents on the side, you have a little vent on this side, you have a big nice vent on the back side, and then you have a vent up here at the top. And that's another thing. I realized that where, you know, the only feasible place to mount an SSD holder is the top or the bottom, because there's just no quarter 20s anywhere else on this thing. But when you put it on the top, I've realized today maybe that's a bad idea because I found out I'm covering the top vents. So that's probably why my SSD is getting warm. But it's like, where else am I going to put the SSD? So I think it would be great to see some third parties make some cages for this thing. Small rig. You are able to record to either SSD or a normal SD card. Now, Blackmagic does recommend that you get either a V60 or a V90 card. I mean, it's the same as when you would record with the SD card in your Blackmagic Pocket 4K or 6K, right? You're gonna need a pretty hardcore SD card. Usually you can tell because they have the dual layered chip there. I've talked about these before. I use the Freetail Evoke Pro SD cards. I've never had a problem with these. I can record 12:1 Blackmagic RAW directly to these cards, no problem at all. They're super cheap. You can get this 128 gig card for like 75 bucks. But however, I did notice recently that the price of these Samsung T5 500 gigabyte SSDs has gone way down. So I think, yeah, why not just, you can get one for like 80 bucks now, 500 gigs. It's insane how cheap these SSDs are. I have mounted the universal small rig SSD holder. It's the same one that was on the side of my Pocket 4K. I've mounted it on the top of the Video Assist, and then you just pop it down in there. Now, in theory, that would be perfect. I mean, it looks perfect up there. The downside is they have put the USB-C port on the bottom of the monitor. And you'll notice where they put it at, it's in between 2 of the quarter 20s. So it's like, you have to mount your monitor all the way to the side now. I could, in theory, also just flip the whole monitor upside down and put the SSD holder on top next to where the port is and use a smaller USB-C cable. But then my monitor will be upside down and I'll look like a dummy when they take BTS photos, right? People were coming up to me on the feature being like, why is your monitor upside down? and it's just annoying, you know, it makes me look like a dummy. So I don't know, I just don't like the design of that, putting the port on the bottom, and where they put it was kind of heinous. For whatever design reason, they couldn't put the USB-C input port on the side of the monitor, which is a bummer. So yeah, but I mean, it's okay, it's working out kind of okay, you know, the SSD being up here. When recording in 4K 60 frames per second on the GH5 and, you know, getting ProRes HQ 422 files and sending out that 10-bit signal with the 128 gigabyte SD card, you could get 48 minutes, and with the SSD, the 500 gig SSD, I could get 188 minutes. So that's pretty good, all things considered. You are able to see quite a bit on the metadata that is recorded to the SSD or the SD card. Basically, when I recorded these clips and I dropped them into DaVinci, you are able to see time code, the start time code, the end time code, your start frame, your end frame, the total amount of frames, the audio bit depth, and the data level, audio channels, and the date, and all of that stuff. And if I had named the files or done anything like that, that would be in the metadata as well. So yeah, it does do pretty good job. I mean, pretty much the same metadata that would be burned in directly through the Blackmagic camera also goes through the Blackmagic Video Assist. So that's pretty cool. I don't want anyone to be confused by that statement I just made. You don't have to have a Blackmagic camera to get the metadata. It's all done through the Video Assist. Because I didn't use any of these examples on the Blackmagic camera. I only did all of the testing directly with my GH5. Someone had a question about wondering if it can go above 4K 60 frames per second or even above 60 frames per second in 1080, and I believe the answer is no. From what I found in testing it and things, and now the downside is I don't have any cameras that actually go beyond true 60 frames per second. The only way the GH5 does that, I mean, the GH5 does go up to 180 frames per second in HD 1080p, but it can only do that via overcrank or high frame rate mode, right? It's not a true 120 frames per second. I don't have any cameras that do a true 120 frames per second. I mean, even the Blackmagic only does it in overcrank. So I really have no way of testing it out, but from what I could find in the manual and in the specs, that, yeah, it only goes up to 60p. I was able to monitor those higher frame rates, the overcrank frame rates. Anytime you're in overcrank, technically your camera is still in 2398 or 30 frames per second, whatever you have it in. So anything in overcrank, the monitor has no problem displaying that. But obviously when you record on the monitor, it's going to record in 2398 because your camera is actually recording 2398. So if you hit record on your camera, it's going to record the overcrank, whatever you're in. So let's say I'm on the GH5, I'm doing overcrank in 120 frames per second over 2398. I hit record on my camera, it's going to record the 120 frames per second, true slow-mo, right? You can't go back and change it. Meanwhile, on here, if you have the trigger record, right, and it starts recording on the Video Assist at the same time, your Video Assist is going to be recording in just normal 2398. So that's interesting. You could very well have an option to have both. If you were on a project and you were like, yeah, I'm going to do overcrank 180 frames per second. We're going to max out this GH5. And then up here, you're just still recording to this on ProRes. You wouldn't be getting that overcrank up here. You would just get normal 2398 or whatever the normal frame rate. There is a trigger record. If you have a camera that can trigger record through HDMI, then you can also do it through the monitor. Meaning, like, once you hit record on the GH5, because it has the trigger record function via HDMI, the monitor will automatically start rolling. However, you do have to turn that on in the menu, right? So, yeah, so see, you have trigger record function to ability to turn it on and off on the Video Assist. And you can do video start stop, or you can have it for timecode run as well. So that's pretty cool. But again, you have to be able to have the function in your camera. Now, if I had a camera that could send out a raw signal, like a Sony camera, for instance, like a Sony FS7 or a FS5. I believe those both send out raw via SDI. You can do that. You can record Blackmagic RAW to SSD, so that's pretty awesome. Here you see all the flavors. You get ProRes HQ, 422 LT or proxies, and of course all the flavors of DNxHR. Okay, and over here, you know, we talked about the trigger record options. You have record audio channels. You can do 2, 4, 8, or 16 audio channels, so that's pretty nuts. And also, this is much similar to the Pocket 4K. So you can have it, if your card starts dropping frames, if you don't have a fast enough card, you can have it set to stop recording or just give you an alert. So that's nice, because I do like that option on the 4K as well. Okay, now over here on the monitor side of things, this is much like a Blackmagic camera. You can decide if you want clean feed, you want to display your 3D LUT, you want zebras, focus assist, frame guides, grids, false color, blue only. Now here's a cool thing. Blue only is another cool way for you to really see what your monitor is seeing. It's a great way to see true contrast and things like that. And there, this is a great option. There you'll see this is blue only. And it's much like black and white. Now what's interesting is that if you notice down here on the GH5, my actual scene is very blue. So in blue only, you are getting, it's just a great way to see where your black levels are in terms of contrast and black levels. Okay, so that's a nice feature. Okay, and here you can change your focus assist type. You can have peaking, you want colored lines. Here's all your different focus assist colors, red, blue, white, green. Here you have LCD screen rotation, 180, or you can just put it to auto. So that's pretty rad. You can have the screen auto rotate. So I have it on auto rotate right now, and let's just try out to see how well it works. And there it goes. So yeah, it does work very, very well, which I love that, because there's been some monitors that I've recently been using where it doesn't auto rotate. And boy, is that annoying when you are hauling ass on a set. So I love that this one actually auto rotates. Okay, so then we also have anamorphic D-squeeze. So you can do 1.33, 1.66, or 2 times anamorphic. So that's cool. Okay, and then we go over here to the setup. You can do all this, video assist name, mine's dog times, go figure. You can put in all this stuff. Here's a cool little feature. You can even turn on a tally light LED on the monitor. So this is cool for all my live event guys. So much like the Pocket 4K has, and the 6K, has a little tally red light on it. And usually I turn it off if I'm doing narrative stuff because I don't want it like in people's faces and stuff. But what's cool is that if you're doing a live event, people will know you're recording from far away. So the downside is I've kind of covered it up again with the SSD. This is a problem. Where can I put the SSD without covering vents and tally lights? So I don't know if you're going to be able to see this when I actually hit record, but there we go. Yeah, you can see it under there. It's actually on right now when I'm recording, and then when I hit stop, it is off. So that's a pretty cool feature, I think, for, you know, all my live event guys, or just anyone, like for YouTubers, you can tell that you can know that you're rolling. So I just think that's a nice feature. And then you can even change the brightness of it. So that was on low. So you can change it all the way up to high. Let's see what it looks like on high. So here we go. I'm going to roll. And yeah, there you can totally see it up under the SSD now. So yeah, I just think that's pretty cool. It's little things like that, you know. And then here you have different forms of timecode input. You can do video, last clip, regen, or preset, timecode preferences, default, drop frame, non-drop frame, timecode output, timeline, clip, timecode preset. So they really, I mean, you can really fine tune timecode. And here we go with audio meters. You have all these options. This is for all my audio guys, right? This is for all your stuff, timestamp, file suffix. Here you can display histogram, and you can have this always on, you know, much like the old video assist or like a Blackmagic Pocket camera. But I prefer to have that off. You know, you lose some forms of control. So we lose our skip buttons. And here we have our 3G SDI outputs, and then a reset video assist option. And then here is our LUT page, and we've already looked at this. It does come preloaded with LUTs, much like our Pocket Cinema cameras. And then these are some LUTs that I put in. I put in my my buttery film LUTs and my GH Alex LUTs for the GH5. And then, of course, all this stuff, it's much like the Blackmagic Pocket. You can tap here to change the time code. I just want to show you some cool playback features here. So I'm going to rewind this a little bit, because when I tap it once, it'll repeat that specific clip. See how it jumped it back on the timeline there now? And then if I scroll to the end of my timeline here, And if I tap it twice, you'll notice there's 2 circles around the play triangle now. It's going to play back the entire timeline on repeat. So it'll loop the entire timeline, or it'll loop just each individual clip based on how many times you tap the play button. Now also you can jump between each clip, but also they have a fast forward option. So if I hold down on this, now here you'll see up here, it's going by ×2. You can go ×4, up all the way up to 50 pretty much. Here you'll see you have to hold on to this and it'll just start jumping all the way up to 50, or we can do it in rewind as well. And now we can jump back, or we can, then you can slowly bring it back. So it just has some really interesting kind of fast forward and rewind features as well. The battery levels are also a bit of a question. So I went ahead and just ordered an Alvin's cable Sony NPF L series dummy battery to DTAP because I like to run everything to DTAP. However, on my GH5, I don't really use DTAP because I just don't want to have a large footprint with this little camera. So what I did use is my Sony NPF 750s. Those are the mids. So in the Sony L series world, if you don't know, you have the 550s, the 750s, and the 950s. I call the 550s the lows, the 750s the mids, and the 950s the highs. The 950s I primarily save for any LED panel units if I use those, and the 750s are the ones that I use usually for monitors. Like I would use that on my port keys, my Shinobi, any of that stuff. And of course now the video assist. The 550s, I don't know what anybody has ever used those for ever. I would recommend, if you are going to be using this on more of a cinema rig style, like just get the dummy battery to DTAP. But I would say don't skimp on that. The Alvin's cables do run you about $44, but it is worth it. I mean, there's enough out there online of seeing people burn up not only their monitors, but also their cameras because they're buying these cheap dummy battery options or even cheap HDMI options. Don't ruin your entire setup just to save a couple bucks on some crappy cable. Alvin's cables are good cables. They're going to last you a long time. They're reliable. They're durable. I mean, just, it makes sense to me. But if you're not going to do that, then I did do the test on the Sony 750s, the mids. And what I found out is, with the monitor running for, a whole hour straight, by the time the first hour went by, one battery was about kaput. It wasn't in the red quite yet. It had about, maybe like 15-20% left in it after an hour of the monitor being on straight for an hour. Now, I wasn't recording the whole time. I was recording intermittently, but when I was recording in the highest resolution possible at the full max frame rate of 60 frames per second. So yeah, that's just giving you an idea that the specs probably are correct. It does say in the specs that you can get 2-hour runtime on 2 Sony L series batteries. So yeah, I mean, that is to say if you wanted to have a little bit of a heavier rig, you could use the highs, the Sony 950 series, and then you would probably get about 4 hours out of 2 of those batteries. And the 5-inch video assist comes in at 1 pound 6 ounces, something like that. Now all of that changes when you start introducing like Sony L series batteries and what size batteries you're going to put into. Obviously, that stuff changes, and you're going to start rigging it out with SSDs and all of that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it could get pretty heavy on you. That's one of the reasons that I went with the Alvin DTAP dummy battery. I think it's maybe a little tricky right here because the 300D is on as my key light right here, and it is so loud. So I think to do a true test, I'm going to kill the 300D, and then we're going to listen because this thing is making noise actually. So let me kill the 300D. It's going to get very dark in here. So the 300D is off. I know it's super. Now we're like, Who's Afraid of the Dark, like that old Nickelodeon show. Probably just gave my age away. Okay, so you can hear this. I'm gonna put my microphone up by it. Now it has been sitting here on for this entire time I've been doing this video, and I've been at this for quite some time now. I can check my audio thing. Yeah, I've been sitting here for 50 minutes according to my H1 Zoom. So I've been recording this video for 50 minutes now, and so it is getting a little hot. And as you'll see, that one battery, I put it in at the top of the video, and it's in the red now. So yeah, each one of these batteries will last you about an hour. I mean, this is the second hour this has happened. So yeah, it will give you 2 hours if you're using the MPF 750s. So we know that you can get a full 2 hours if you use 2 of the 750s. And you'll see that, you know, it has been sitting on, and it is pretty loud. Yeah, it definitely pumps it out. This is kind of a big boo-boo for me. So when you have to keep the speaker level down, because watch, look at that. Whoa. Yeah, see, that's a weird thing that is weird. So you do have feedback issues on this. So that's a little bit of a problem. So I just keep the speaker level all the way down on 0. Yeah, it's pretty bad, actually, now that I'm looking at it. Holy crap. Whew, boy. That's not good. You guys are probably wondering, why do you always get new monitors? Even my wife is like, really, another one? And here's the thing, guys. About 75% of the time, I'm operating like a one-man band. I mean, even when I have Tristan there with me, that's my main assistant. Even when he's there, you know, he's doing all the grip stuff. He's doing all the building the lights, and he's putting up all the stuff, you know, so he's not even really there to help out. So, I mean, the monitor is my first AC. It is my DIT. It's, you know, it's literally those two jobs right there for sure. You know, without, I mean, it's the only way I have to know of helping me nail focus. It's the only way I know of knowing that my color is right, my exposure is right. You know what I mean? So I need a good, reliable monitor. That's why I'm constantly on the hunt for a good monitor. For my Patreon folks, get ready, because Monday's time for the newest Patreon video, and we will be on day 1 of the latest feature film I got off recently. I was the DP for the LA unit on this feature called Choices, and boy, was it a bucket of choices. So we should have a lot of fun diving into that one. And for everybody else, if you made it this long, you're pretty damn cool. For now, that's a wrap.